Hello and welcome to From the Be All End. This is the episode pre-Watford, looking ahead to a big task, a big game at Turf Moor on Saturday tomorrow versus Watford. Another good test for the Clarets as we look at where we're going to settle at the turn of the year in the Championship. With me, Simon Evans and Paul Woodhouse, amazingly together in Cleveland, Ohio, in Woody's bunker, and so we're slightly less exotic in Hapton, Chris Borden. Let's run through what we're going to have a look at today. So we're going to have a look at the Watford game coming up. A really good test for the Clarets again. One of them kind of slightly strange teams. We're also going to perhaps pick up some of the stuff we didn't pick up on from the fans forum. Alan Pace, some of the stuff that he was talking about there, and then also looking at the mystery of Mikey Tresor. Scott Parker referring to him as Mikey this week in the press conference, which kind of almost gives him a bit of a kind of cuddly demeanour. But I think he's been visiting the children's ward and various hospital wards at Burnley. Looks happy as a pig in shit, I have to say. But let's start with Watford. Chris, I mean, Watford, a bit of a strange side. I mean, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Watford. You know, Elton John as the majority owner for so long. Kind of quite a nice ground to visit. I think me and you have both been there covering the Clarets at various junctures. But Watford, again, another one of those tests at Turf Moor where perhaps a side's going to come out and play football and perhaps will give us a bit of an indication of how good we are as a side, as opposed to some of the games we've had recently where we've been against that low block, that kind of 11 men behind the ball kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a very, very attack-minded side, but they give chances away by the same token. Wide open team. Play sort of like a 3-4-2-1, 3-5-2 sort of thing. But by the same token, you're sort of looking at like average pitch positions and that. The two teams who are the most, the not narrowest teams in the Championship, along with Watford, are Millwall and Portsmouth, who both gave Burnley no end of difficulty, to be fair. But like I say, like the Middlesbrough game, you like to think that a team that sort of steps onto Burnley a little might give us a bit of joy. But they have beaten Borough and they have beaten Sunderland, Watford. If you look at the form over Cleverley's reign in total, the last few games of last season, they only lost a couple of dead rubbers at the end. And on the whole, he's been a terrific appointment. Real allegiance to him as a former player as well. And one lad in particular, came out of Belgian football a couple of summers ago, and you're thinking, is he one that maybe Vincent should have had up his sleeve? Czech Mikadze, who was magnificent for Georgia in the summer, particularly against Portugal in the Euros there. Him and Clarets earlier at Napoli, the two sort of talismanic that ball manipulator we've been crying out for. But yeah, they play those two behind Mikey Tresor, obviously, who's been linked with Burnley a couple of times down the years in the national side. But looking at his form in the Championship, he's sort of like the one player we raved about Ben Doak the other week. Czech Mikadze has got it's like the most ball carries and the most sort of ball carries with the XG and all this involved. He's the top expected assists, whatever, if people want to read into the stats like that. But he's one of the most creative footballers in the Championship and cost Watford £2.5 million. It's a real bargain, and he's one. It's a strange little shape, that, isn't it? Whether see if they're going to be playing the just the one up top, but with two off the front. Is that going to be one where Cullen's going to have to sort of take responsibility for one maybe and drop in, But in the same token, we can stretch them hopefully, down the flanks.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, looking at their record, I mean, played 10 at home, 26 points. I mean, that is only bettered by Sheffield United and Leeds both on 28 points. We're a couple back on 20, but away form, not as good, 15th in the form table. Just the 8 points on the road out of 10 games. As Chris said, a bit of a strange side, plenty of talent. A really good manager. I always used to quite like Tom Cleverley as a player, and he seems to be really level-headed, not too dissimilar to his own Scott Parker in terms of, wanting to kind of keep feet on the ground. But as Chris says, the one up top might cause a few problems, but actually, when you look at that formation, you'd think if we click, and we've talked about clicking quite a bit over the last few weeks and a couple of months, it could be one of those games that's a real ding-dong, can't it?
It could be. Then again, it couldn't. But to Chris's point, when he was talking about Tadze, whatever the devil his name is, 40 chances he's created so far this season and 41 dribbles. Now, you compare just that fella to what we've managed to create as a side, then I think that's probably what the matchup is. Us as a side versus just one fella. And it could be quite an interesting matchup in terms of how we deal with that as a defensive unit and whether we're able to break effectively and clinically enough to at least catch something. And it seems like we probably should be able to, considering their away form. But it looks quite good from their perspective. And obviously our home form is extremely solid, isn't it?
Yeah, solid, Simon, as Woody says. But one of the things that a lot of season ticket holders and home performers have talked about is we've not really had much sparkle at home, have we? It's been a bit dull. We've perhaps saved some of our better 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and I still think that we've not put together a 90 minutes for the away form. But it's another chance, isn't it? We go into this weird Christmas period where people will kind of win a couple on the bounce. A couple of teams we expect perhaps were over us to kind of drop their form. It's quite important not only to get a result, but actually a bit of a performance, isn't it? Because we want momentum going into the new year and into that transfer window in January.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've built Watford up a little bit here, haven't we? But you look at their recent form and their position. I was going to say, like before, they seem to be the best side outside of the top six, and then you look at the league table and the seventh, so it's kind of a bit obvious, really, isn't it? But they've and the one up front it can be an handful. Bio, he scored 2 at the weekend against West Brom, didn't he? In that win there, and he's your big number 9. He's a handful. So it is a test for us, but I'm really hoping that you're right, and they are a team who's going to come and think they can beat us, because I think we're all fed up of watching these teams playing for a draw and 2 banks of deep lying midfielders in front of a back 4 and just limiting us to having to produce something really special to open them up, which we're not really that capable of very often. So I'm hoping it is an open game. We could really do with one like that. We could do with a cracker, really, couldn't we? We could do with one of them games where we get a last-minute a last-minute winner in a 3-2 win or something like that. There hasn't really been a game much like that, really. So, we've had some late winners recently, which is a good sign. But we'll see. We'll see what side we've got out. There's still a few question marks over a few players, aren't there, fitness-wise? So we'll see what it is, but I think it should be a good one. We've built Watford up for a reason. They are decent, and Cleverley is doing a good job, and it should be a good test.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, Simon talks about injuries there. I think the biggest concern for all of us is probably Maxime Esteve. I mean, he kind of put the ball out of play twice and then went off, and I think Woody, not to out him, kind of had it as down as a bit of a pass out of play groin, maybe reminiscent of Brian Jensen against Wigan that time when he pulled up. But it's kind of I think Esteve said on Instagram, bit of a dead leg, kind of should be okay. But Scott Parker being his usual kind of they're moving in the right direction. John Egan came in. I thought he had a good game against last time out away at Norwich. But it's kind of, Estevan, Egan, Riley feel like that best partnership, don't they?
They do, yeah. That's of their own making. Obviously, they've sort of gelled together. Esteve who can do the lot. He's combative in the air. He can bring the ball out. Not to the level of a Bayer or an Ekdal maybe, but he's adept at bringing the ball out. That balance as well. You've got that left foot with Esteve. He's got that pace. And Egan Riley, we've seen that sort of the range of passing that we used to rave about with Harwood Bellis, and he's got that sort of defensive mindset. He obviously hates conceding goals. You can just see in the manner he goes about his business. He's determined to block the path to Burnley's goal, and it's good he's back available again. As Egan didn't look out of place. He slotted in seamlessly there, and Worrell and Ekdal on the bench as well. So the squads again. It's we are in that sense having an embarrassment of riches. It's just at the other end of the park, isn't it?
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, we kind of, Zian Fleming came on, scored that absolute world against Norwich. It were, a little bit of inventiveness that we've perhaps missed. He was going over to talk to Josh Cullen about what he was going to do, and Brownhill apparently shouts, "Oh, they're not switched on," and he, almost a bit weird, really, picks a short free kick up and then blasts a thunder bastard into the back of the net. But at that top of the field, we're still really struggling to work out how that works, isn't it? I mean, Sarmiento went off. We think it's a concussion protocol substitute because we had no substitutions left, which means that, somebody pointed out on Twitter, either he's missing because of the, protocol, or we've, sold Norwich and the referee are wrong, and we'll probably get punished if he doesn't miss the game. But that front three, front four, front five, whatever it is, remains a conundrum, doesn't it, for Scott Parker in terms of who to play and where to play them?
It seems to be that not just the front three, the midfield as well. It seems to be every week we have a little bit of a shuffle. The first 60 minutes doesn't quite work, and then whoever we bring on, maybe that's where we'll nick something at the end. And it seems we seem to have had enough time now to at least get a good sense as to who we should be playing and how it should be working. But it just seems like we still feeling our way through it a little bit, and we know we haven't got those options up front. We're hardly Watford in that sense, are we? But hopefully the January window we may see something to alleviate that, and a few of the folks who are finding the way on the grass coming back, because we know those will be extremely decent options if they're fit and they start firing.
Yeah, and Simon, is there a more frustrating phrase than "back on the grass" in English football? I mean, we used to have it. We Dyche. There you are. There's a bingo tick for anybody who's got Sean Dyche on the from the BLM bingo. But Dyche used to say, "Oh, he's back on the grass," and you knew it were about fucking 6 months before the guy had see a Burnley shirt. But that whole kind of moving in the right direction, back on the grass, setback. It feels real kind of, modern management speak, doesn't it? I mean, ultimately, whether they're back on the grass or not, unless they're on the field, i.e., Turf Moor or whatever away ground, we can't count on them, can we, at the minute?
No, it doesn't mean anything to us, really, does it? I mean, he does seem to use the heading in the right direction one, which, again, doesn't mean anything, really, does it? If you've been injured and you're rehabilitating, then you're heading in the right direction, aren't you? So it's like I don't know what we're supposed to take from that, other than there do seem to be a few dead legs knocking around Gawthorpe, which is an unusual one. Set people back. We did get some info from Parker about Redmond, that he'd suffered a little injury. I think it was a calf, he said, which wasn't directly connected to his previous injury, but they're just being very careful with him having been out for so long. And that often happens with players, doesn't it, when they're out for like nearly a year or 6 months or something. They come back and the muscles aren't quite, the way they should be tuned up, as it were. And it's a pity because we could really do with him, that change of pace that he brings and those little bursts through the channels that he could deliver. They could give us something a bit different against those low blocks and those teams that sort of sit in against us. So, yeah, it's frustrating with a lot of players. I mean, some of these injuries have been, Benson has been a long one as well, hasn't it? And again, games like we've had, just having Benson's ability to come on even for the last 20 minutes and maybe do one of his specials in the corner, we haven't been able to call on that. Ramsey, another player we don't know much about his fitness other than he is on the grass and it's a way off yet and that sort of thing. So, it was interesting, Parker, though, pushed back slightly. The question he was asked about the January window, and it was like, Alan Pace said he's not expecting to do too much business. Are you aligned with that? And he said, well, we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. Which in his usual diplomatic way was, I thought, Scott Parker saying, and he said there'll be players going out, to get games and stuff. Now, we've got a big squad, but a lot of them are supposed to be injured. It's going to be interesting to see who goes out because, there are suspicions about one in particular, but maybe a couple of other players that maybe they're just being held back for the January window. So we'll see what happens on that. And certainly Scott Parker didn't sound like someone who was saying, I'm happy with his squad, anything we get is a bonus. He seemed to be quite keen to talk to Alan Pace about the January window. So that's one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, Simon rather cheekily mentioned, one particular individual. Let's call him Mikey. I mean, dead leg. I mean, come on. I mean, you were, I think, renowned every time I played five-a-side with you at the Soccer Dome in Blackburn. You used to stub a toe quite a bit, but still be fit for the next game and things like that. A dead leg. I mean, we all used to play with a dead leg at school, didn't we? If someone kneed us in a thigh during kind of, dinner break, we'd play in an afternoon, wouldn't we? I mean,
the old Uruguayan knee nudge, that one, yeah, the old Mexico.
Yeah, it feels, doesn't it? I mean, the whole Mike Tresor. Listen, we kind of reported what Alan Pace said in terms of he's fully fit. We'd like to see him play. Pace is not going to kind of degenerate the transfer fee for Mike Tresor, but dead leg feels a bit, me dog ate me homework, does it not?
My children still believe he exists. I'm trying to keep the magic alive for them, but I think we all know deep down that he's not real. He's not real, and I don't think he's coming at Christmas, is he?
Do you believe in Mike Tresor?
There's a Greg Lake song there, isn't there, somewhere? I believe in Mike Tresor. They saw me in Angel Choir and all that shit.
Well, the more you read about it, the more you see. I mean, it sounded a bit like Jack and Ori this afternoon to me. That like I say, we've seen him on all these photographs. Recently in training at was it Blackburn Royal? I presume they were at yesterday. They usually split the squad into two, but it's smiling there. If he's fit, if he's had a dead leg, fine. But it just seems to be. But next week there'll be some mythical thigh strain or a hamstring or something, and then in January, all of a sudden he's been loaned out to Bruges or something. In Bruges, he's. I just the sort of gut feeling is he's never going to pull a Burnley shirt on ever again, is he? Yeah.
Well, let's get down to that, because we could talk around it being careful because we don't know, right? So we are speculating a bit, but what is going on with Mike Tresor really? And my feeling is, if I was to bet, and I've got no inside information on this whatsoever, this is just a guess from me, I would say something went wrong at the end of the transfer window. He was supposed to leave the club in the summer. It fell through for some reason, and they've said to him, "Okay, don't worry, just keep your nose clean until January. Don't make a fuss, and we'll get you out, and we have a move. And keep training, keep yourself fit, keep yourself so that we can get a fee for you or a loan deal for you or whatever, and we won't risk you getting injured during games, and away you go." And so he's smiling and went on these visits because he knows the end is near. You know, he knows his time is coming, and he can go on back to the league that he was, assist king in. You know, that's what I think it is. But I mean, what do other people think?
You play if he's fit and available, and he's in. It's like say if you got that window, it looked like a move to Ajax fell through, didn't it? At the end of end of the summer, and but
maybe that's it.
You just say to him, so like you've got 4 months now. Give it the gun for 4 months. Blow the championship away. How many championship clubs have an asset with his sort of CV? Like, one of the top assist makers in Europe the season, the summer he arrived, £18 million attacking assets. To not feature at all, to say, we're not going to risk you with an injury for 4 months is ludicrous. You're paying his wages and this, that, and the other. He's a Burnley asset, a Burnley employee, and if he's fit and available, he's either not up to the standard, Scott Parker don't fancy he fits into what he's trying to achieve. But the whole thing's ludicrous to me.
Yeah.
He does manage to get himself on like the front of every single photo, though, doesn't he? He's very photogenic. We'll give him that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was some fan at Royal Blackburn or Burnley General, whichever the two visits he was on, posted a picture on Twitter. We've not seen the official club pictures of those hospital visits yet, but, smiling really widely. There was a picture last week of him in training with Hannibal and Shambo, I think it was, kind of, laughing. He doesn't look like a kind of guy who's not enjoying training. I think on the team picture he has a bit of a sullen look, but it's really weird, Woody, isn't it, that we've got this player. Nobody seems to be able to tell us. They tell us he's fit. Alan Pace at the fans forum says he's fit. We hope he'll play. But it does feel there's like a little bit of weirdness going on, doesn't there?
Yes, he's going to wind up being Burnley's top enigma of all time, having played 15 minutes for 18 million. We all thought it was going to be a world beater and never saw him do anything. And that'll be it. He'll be whisked away in January, the move that he always wanted or whatever. And that'll be the end of the story.
The top enigma of all time. That's a big call, is that?
He'll replace Ben Gibson then, will
he? Yes.
It's some work to go to beat Remco.
With Marco Gentile and these characters, and
we should build a kind of 11. Most of them appear to be kind of either centre backs or attacking midfielders and Mercurial. Yeah, of course, Berisha was the big one, weren't he? Cottrell saw him for, what was it, Albania B versus England B, and then he was a studio guest for Sky and signed him. He was, a guy who went on to have quite a good career down under in Australia. As
really good career there, yeah.
Yeah, for a number of years. But, I mean, talking about the players that we know are probably going to be hanging around kind of post January and what have you. I mean, Chris, we keep talking about Redmond. We know Redmond's had a bit of a setback and things like that. I mean, what are your priorities for the January window? And I think, we can probably all guess what your priorities are. But, I mean, Scott Parker clearly wants to have a conversation with Alan Pace about, where the movement's going to be, shall we say. But what would you say? I mean, we have been linked with a Peruvian fullback from Denmark, Oliver Son, I believe, which looks a bit of a done deal at right back. But
do we
stop piling defenders?
Yeah, you want his auntie at Turf Moor, wouldn't you? Helena Christensen. But I mean, he sounds again like you look at his CV, and it would look like a fine acquisition, particularly so we don't have to rely on Humphreys there. Just again, it's this ludicrous situation that Humphreys is basically our backup fullback at left back and right back. We've had this, this squad with the ridiculous depth and options, and of that situation. So I mean, that's right back would be ideal. Stroke left back. I still want to, that sort of midfielder, that can really link play, take the ball off the back on the half turn, drive it forward, spray the ball, pick a pass, score from distance, that sort of thing. And I think everyone wants one of those, don't they? They all action mid-noughties Premier League midfielder or something like that. And obviously, I would still like to see it, the wide areas supplemented, if not, to allow Koleosho and Anthony just a bit of a, they basically play if they're fit. Form doesn't come into the equation, really. So you need an option in that respect. And it looks like, so the more we go down the road, it looks like Redmond, is he going to feature at all? There's a bit of a link with Birmingham the other day or so. And we need a striker. I mean, is Foster going to be reliable? Is he going to be available? He's been here for 2 years, and we've not had a great deal. Obviously, you can't. The mental health issues are what they are, and you give him the time he needs, and the club were superb in that period. But we want to see an asset who's shown he can, on occasion flicker into life in brilliant fashion in the Premier League. I want to see him do it in the Championship now, and he's one goal all season. A great goal, nice goal that we all enjoyed at the time, but we want to see more.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, I genuinely thought Chris was taking the piss about Son being Elena Christensen's nephew, but it turns out he was, or he is, I should say. I mean, he's somebody as a fullback has got 4 goals in 22 appearances for Silkeborg this season. But, I mean, Chris touched on quite an important point there. I mean, he talks about Foster just getting 1 goal this season. We do lack goals, don't we? And I think Brownhill is quite a way ahead in both the goals and assist column. Parker's really going to earn his money in January, isn't he, in terms of pulling rabbits out of the hat? Do you think this is, the time when we kind of perhaps abandon that, Lee Mooney, mud analytics kind of let's get young players who might be good for the future, and actually to sustain us in the top 2, top 3, we actually just need a bit of Parker going, you know what, that lad's a good striker. He's going to get us a few goals, a bit like some of those later summer signings that we brought in.
It's that level of being pragmatic, but also building for the Premier League. Because it's like, yes, we know we've been a little bit pragmatic with the likes of Laurent, but it's how many of those players do you bring in? Because you know perfectly damn well in 6 months, if we do manage to go up, then they'll probably wind up getting jettisoned, won't they? And it's still, we're talking about the same problems that we were talking about 2 or 3 seasons ago about not having covering fullbacks, and we've gone backwards in terms of wingers, and the players that we thought were extremely decent, or we thought we may have lost because they had decent Premier League seasons, pretty much look not like duds, but they don't look like they've pushed on as the players we expected them to be in terms of Koleosho and Foster in the Championship. So whether Ferguson from Brighton does wind up coming down a division, and if he's fit and can find a bit of form, then he's the type of player that will obviously push us in that right direction. But again, we were talking about Watford and one guy having 40 chances. We are 19th in the league as a side, having made 33. And it speaks volumes. We aren't going to go up automatically with that kind of statistical background, as it were. And so it's, we've got to do something, but we've also got to look to one eye on the Premier League, as well as being able to sort out the short-term issues for the rest of this season. And I don't envy Parker, Mooney, or anybody trying to sort that out.
Yeah, and Simon, that is the big challenge, isn't it? Because we I think we're all of the opinion that this squad, if we were to get promoted, would be nowhere near good enough for the Premier League. And again, I don't want to be kind of, a doomsayer, but, let's be honest, arguably the squad we went up with in the last Championship season, albeit with a few loan players in there, felt stronger. We feel this is a real, too good for the Championship squad, although even at this stage we're not too good for the Championship because we're not running away with it. We're not top of league. We're not even top 2. It's a bit of a weird situation in January in that, are we buying for winning promotion, knowing we're going to have a massive overhaul in the summer again, or are we looking for players who can perhaps stick around if we were to get promotion and give us a real chance of getting somewhere in the Premier League?
Well, going back to what Pacer was saying at Burnley College in the fans forum, he was sort of indicating he wanted to keep this side together, wasn't he? When he was sort of asked about whether there's going to be another turbulent summer next year and so on, he's like, "Oh, Scott's building something. We want to try and keep this together," and so on, which is a nice sentiment. And obviously, you don't want to just change things for change's sake. But yeah, you're right in the sense that last time around, we at least had the illusion that Zarori and Benson might rip it up in the Premier League. That Taylor Harwood-Bellis and Maatson and Nathan Teller were all going to have, adjust really well to the Premier League, and we're going to be exciting team, and we're going to be mid-table. I remember somebody predicting, during the pre-season excitement after we'd stormed to victory against, was it Benfica or Sporting Lisbon? I can't remember who it was. Benfica wasn't it? I think
Benfica, yeah.
We had that illusion. There's no illusion. There's no feeling now that this team, if it goes up into the Premier League, it's going to be good to see Josh Laurent take on the Premier League. I mean, it's with all due respect to Josh Laurent, but he's not a player who's going to go and same with Egan Riley, doing really well in the Championship. Are we looking forward to seeing him test his pace against Luis Diaz? I'm not. I think there'd be a lot of work to do if this team goes up. And we're to get in that position in the first place. So, I don't think they're going to be building for the Premier League in January. I just don't think they are. I think what they're going to have to do is find one or two players that can help us get over the line and get in that situation in the first place, and then deal with it all in the summer, which we're now getting used to a little bit, aren't we? But it has to be a centre forward. I mean, Chris has said, he'd like to bring in 2 fullbacks, a central midfielder, 2 wingers, and a centre forward. And I'd agree with that. But I think if I had to pick one, I'd go for the centre forward. I think if we want to make sure we finish in that top 2 and not 3rd or 4th and risking the playoffs, we need that number 9 who's going to score the goals that get us over the line. So time to get back in for Victor Gyökeres. I think we nearly got it done when he was at Coventry. It's there's a deal, isn't it? It's funny, isn't it, looking at some of the deals that we nearly got done, and you think that in one summer we nearly signed Victor Gyökeres from Coventry, according to reports, who's now one of the most wanted centre forwards in Europe, and we nearly signed Cole Palmer, sorry.
Yeah, Colton Palmer would.
That would have been an interesting one.
I'd take Colton Palmer right now.
That would have been the dive signing rather than.
Can you imagine that one? We always whinge about that one summer when we signed Dale Stevens. That would have raised one or two eyebrows had we signed Carlton Palmer. Cole Palmer, by all intents and purposes, was pretty much done. When it came to before the England Euros victory, shall we say, and it was only then that Chelsea came in with what looked at the time as a ridiculous offer for a player who'd Guardiola had almost run out of ideas on how to kind of get the best out of, and has obviously gone on to incredible things. But would it? I'm somebody who I'm friends with Andy Payton on Facebook. Andy's always posting pictures and videos of him scoring these incredible goals, as we remember, late 90s, early 2000s, for the Clarets. What we won't give for Andy Payton up top, bit of a fox in the box, a bit of a guy who can kind of pick the ball up 20 yards from goal, turn a defender on the edge of the area and fire into that top corner. We've kind of been missing that for years, haven't we?
We'd put it with anybody just getting in the box, never mind turning a little bit of pace or whatever. Let's just get there first. We get a nosebleed. We're missing Ron Futcher. We're missing anybody. It's obviously the style of playing. You play to what you've got, don't you, to a lot of to a greater or lesser degree, and we need the personnel. And there are folks out there, but we certainly miss that. Somebody like Andy Payton up top, and what we wouldn't give for something along those lines.
Yeah, and Chris, a lot of the talk is going out and getting a number 9, somebody who knows where the goal is. I mean, they're hard enough to get at the best times, but January, I mean, Simon talked about going out and getting Gyökeres, and then in the next sentence said one of the most sought after strikers in Europe. Trying to get somebody to come into the Championship in a team that's not running away with the league, but has that potential to, get promoted. Obviously, a manager who's got promoted twice out of this division. It's a tough ask, isn't it? Trying to get somebody who perhaps will get you 10, 12, 15 goals in the second half of the season.
It is, but like I said, I've seen Chef U linked with Brereton Diaz, who obviously they had on loan second half of last season, ended up going to Southampton. I think he's still not won a Premier League game for a record run. But you're looking at, who is available, and you want to be competing with Leeds and Chef U for that body. If they're after Brereton Diaz, why not us? And if they get Brereton Diaz, would you take Kiefer Moore, who's been doing a job for Chef U? That's Kiefer Moore's obviously. I'm saying obviously. I presume he was his work with Parker at some stage. I'm trying to think when he was when he was promoted with Bournemouth. So I think he was promoted with Parker, wasn't he? So I'll have to have a look on the old soccer base for that. But whether it might be a domino effect transfer like that, it'd be a great one. Can you imagine getting Brereton Diaz and going back to Ewood with him in January? And that'd be super, wouldn't it? But you've got to be these sort of deals. I mean, who's gone to the Premier League's not having a great time of it and would benefit from, playing with a promotion hunting team for 6 months, etc. Is there a kid from the Premier League that's absolute tip top that that's absolutely straining at the least to play, men's football, first team football? There's got to be something out there, isn't there?
Yeah. Simon, we're going to end on this, but I'm going to throw a name to you because he was in deep conversation with Scott Parker and has been linked with Sheffield United. Ash the Bash, up to his old tricks when he was coming on as a substitute, pushing Josh Brownhill's drinks bottle into his face, creating a wry smile from the Burnley captain. But listen, maybe we're going backwards. Maybe it's one of those where we're wanting a Mike Conroy or a John Francis. But would you, at any point, have Ashley Barnes back in January on a 6-month deal? We talked about it last season, didn't we? We talked about it so much in terms of we shouldn't have let Bash go. Would you, given the fact that he looks to get on famously with Scott Parker after that game, and he's not getting, he started one game, I know he's been injured, but, bit part player at Norwich, would you perhaps try and tempt Ashley back north?
I would, but not as the solution himself to the number 9 problem. But I would definitely, if you're getting back on a half-year deal, a loan deal, or a short-term contract, get him in, kick people up the arse a little bit as well, give a little bit of a lift, come on for 20 minutes and make things happen in the box, upset people, absolutely. But I would be looking to spend some money or at least pull off a super loan deal for somebody he's not going to come in, Ashley Barnes, and score a dozen goals in the second half of the season, but he might help us win a few important games. So I would do it and bring him in alongside Ferguson from Brighton. If we could get him. I know there's some Premier League clubs sniffing around for him as well, but if he's not getting a game, it would, I think you could make a case to Brighton that he comes in and you give him a really good season, a really good 6 months, and he can go back to Brighton in the Premier League if they want him then, confident, having helped us get over the line in the promotion chase. I think there's a case you can make to Brighton and to the player that dropping down a division for 6 months isn't going to ruin his career. People think it's unrealistic. I think that's one that I'd really be trying my best to see if I could get done, because he looks like a player who's got a future.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, he's been linked with Leicester, but, after a bit of a half-decent start under Ruud van Nistelrooy, I mean, Leicester look like they're going to struggle. If you were, if you were a player's agent, if you were the player, if you were the parent club, as Simon said, surely kind of being part of a team that's pushing to go somewhere and progress rather than a team that's probably going to be, trying to fight all their, with all their might to stay in the Premier League, and maybe it is that kind of dropping down a division. It's difficult, but surely as a player, as a club, as an agent, you kind of go, you know what, this is a bit of a, win-win situation, isn't it, for Ferguson?
It should. In a lot of regards, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? I saw that he was linked with Fulham as well. But I'd also read that Brighton weren't too keen on playing within the Premier League because he probably wouldn't get quite the same amount of playing time, would he? Well, yeah, of course you'd have him, and of course he'd have an impact as long as he's fit and he can find his form, and he should set the Championship on fire. He's exactly the type of player who would have an exceptional second half of the season and could very well be the difference between us finishing in the playoff positions and finishing either first or second. And again, this is why I would also bring Bashley back. The fact that I think one of the mistakes going into the Premier League was not keeping him in some kind of capacity or a role around the club, because you know perfectly damn well how he held that dressing room together. And you knew that dressing room really needed pulling together during that season. And similarly, that's what he'd be able to do now moving into next season. And it's a no-brainer because he's wanted to get back into coaching with us, hasn't he? So why the devil not? And if he can come on and do 10 minutes and just shit house away towards the end of the season, it's going to be a fabulous next 6 months, isn't it?
Get it done, Don Pace. Get it done.
Don Pace, that's what we need. We need Don. Come on, Don. That's what we love. But, right, let's leave it there. Let's see how we get on against Watford. We'll be back on Monday with a debrief of the Watford game, hopefully with a nice, positive podcast for you to start your Christmas week. It is the last game before the big man comes and empties his sack all over your carpet. Let's hope for a positive result. Until Monday, enjoy the start of the festivities. Enjoy the game at Turf Moor, and we'll see you on Monday. But until then, up the Clarets.